It's day two. Outside in the exhibition hall, there's a wealth of new equipment on display, but more importantly, I think there's a wealth of human beings who you may not have been interacting with for a while, innovators and technical wizards and wizards and warlocks. What's a female wizard?
A witch? A witch?
No, that's got negative connotations.
We'll take it.
Yeah. Professor, you're all Professor McGonagall. Anyway, and right here in front of us today, we have the amazing illuminatrix, led by Vanessa Whyte, to host the panel. Innovators and trailblazers in their own regard. And without further ado, Vanessa Whyte, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you. Oh, thanks. Thank you to the BSC and Audra for inviting us to kick off Saturday with you guys. Just a little bit, if you don't know who Illuminatrix are, we are co-founded by myself and Catherine Goldschmidt, and we are a group of female cinematographers who are working in the UK, or based primarily in the UK. We work all over the world. We have two collectives. Illuminatrix is established cinematographers with over 5 years of experience, and we have a sister group called Illuminatrix Rising, who are emerging cinematographers who are either transitioning from other roles or recent graduates. And we are all going to be in the talent bar around 3 o'clock this afternoon if you want to come meet anybody. So we only have 30 minutes. I'm going to be really, really quick. And please, we'll open out to the audience after the first question. So put your hand up if you want a question, and please wait for the microphone. I've been told strictly. Those are the rules. I'm going to start off. Catherine, Derry, here on my left. I won't ask people to introduce themselves because we don't have enough time. You can Google everybody. I also want to say we have a new website, illuminatrixdops.com, launched this morning, sponsored by Universal Production Services. Thank you very much to them. The first question is, what piece of advice would you give yourself? What do you know now that you wish you'd known then when you were starting out?
I think for me personally, I wish I'd been just more confident in everything I did when I was younger. When I look back, if I'd had more confidence to just connect with people that I was working with and get contacts. I started working full-time. My first job was a full-time studio assistant in a motion control studio. And I was on lots and lots of different shoots, and there was so much opportunity to meet so many people, but I was a bit shy and not very sure of myself. So I think the piece of advice I would give myself would, just to be a bit more sure of my abilities and to make connections and be confident about knowing what you want to do and. And people, and knowing that people will help because they do. I didn't have any connections in the film industry. None of my family are from there, but there are so many people out there that do like to help, and so do make connections with people whenever you can.
Thank you, Simona.
I guess from my point of view, because I started in the UK after graduation from film school, I didn't actually know anybody apart from my classmates and the directors from school, and the directors didn't start shooting right away, so I just had to start making connections in one way or another. And the advice that I give myself now is actually trust the process of connecting with people and engaging and creating meaningful connections, and don't expect results right away. And I feel like now looking back, I see how I started working with people from school or like people that I met after graduation, and that was based on reaching out to people, saying who I am, what I wanted to do, and I just felt like you have to spend the time doing that and also trust that you are going to get something back in return for putting that effort in, and not having that constant anxiety of like, I have to work, or like I have to shoot something. It's just spending that time, especially if you're starting out, to build those first connections with directors, and it does pay off. And then at some point you will find yourself like surrounded by people that are actually interested in working with you because you did spend that time to letting them know who you are and what your interest is. And I feel like now looking back, I'm like much wiser, and I'm a little bit calmer and like more patient with how I create these connections with people. And I feel like that kind of like turns out for the best. And it's also a game that, if it doesn't pay off in a month, it doesn't mean that you're not going to work with those people. It might happen in 3 years, and you might be caught by surprise, and you might taken by surprise on how that networking works. But you just have to give it time. So yeah, that's my piece of advice to myself.
Thank you.
I tend to agree with everybody. One, don't make any decisions hungover. That'll be just for everyone to take. I think, looking back, I would just say that you're constantly evolving as an artist and as a filmmaker and storyteller and a human. So just, as you say, kind of trust the process, trust your process, and take chances, because that's what will lead you into that next evolution of figuring out who you are, because you just change every year and every day. So kind of just, allow yourself to don't keep yourself in a box, and just sort of keep trying.
Yana?
Probably the only thing that I would advise myself earlier on is to not be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Take on projects that you've never done before, and not be scared to do it, because in essence your comfort zone is pretty much only things that you are familiar with, that you know, and as soon as you learn something new, you instantly widen your comfort zone. And it applies to any aspect of life, actually, and this is what I would recommend myself when I was younger.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question? Okay, down to me then. So what I love about when we come to these panels, and if you go to Camerage, you have the same thing, is all of us cinematographers going, this is how I make beautiful images, la la la. But in reality, our job is a very weird situation between delivering a schedule, delivering on a budget, and when you're starting out, I was certainly very naive about what the job was, and I was all, it's beautiful photography. But when you actually start working in the business, and especially in television and, feature films, a lot of it is actually about, like, what can you shoot in this time and how much it's going to cost. So it's a weird battle between serving the producer and the production and serving the director and the vision. And it's really interesting when you talk about connections, because obviously what's amazing about this career is it's very long, and, you can still be working well into, old age. So how do you guys manage this notion of, like, not burning bridges when you're in that situation where you're torn between doing what the director wants or making it look as you wished it looked when you thought about it, and actually being there half an hour before wrap with the production manager on your shoulder, and it's, whatever's happening is happening, and you have to deliver the scene. Like, where do you guys stand there? How do you manage that? Should we go in order?
I'm first again.
Sorry. Should we go backwards? We're going backwards order. Yana.
Well, it's a very good question. Actually, you just face this pretty regularly, unfortunately, and it depends on each and every project. It's different. Sometimes you wouldn't compromise a thing because it's crucial for you. It's very important creatively. Sometimes it's less important for you, and you'd be prepared to compromise on the quality of your work. And it's a combination of factors, really, which is always time, money, creativity, actors, producers, a lot of people around you. So there is no generic advice or solution for a situation like this. You just have to play it by ear and decide on the go when you are in the situation. And obviously try to create whatever you can as quickly as you can, and to your best creative abilities, I would say.
Thank you.
It's a great question. With time, I think you discern which projects to take. Choosing the right project and how you can approach it is first, because you can figure out whether you will have the support, whether the director has support or has a voice, and if you're going to have the time, particularly in pre-production, and the resources to fulfill the vision that is your job there to fulfill. And then prep is really important to me, so that you don't find yourself on the day or at least when the fires do have to be put out, that you come from a prepared place, that you know what you're trying to achieve and within what limitations. I think ultimately, I think we're always going to see the shortcomings that or the sort of the sacrifices that we've made in terms of our visuals. But I think ultimately what people see is the performance, and they see a schedule made and a budget sort of kept. And so I think that as long as, was it like 80% good, I think Natasha Breyer once had said to me, and I find myself on set frequently saying that, like, let it go, because people are not going to see the perfect highlight, but they will remember that you didn't make the day, or that the director didn't get his take. So I think it's ultimately about picking your battles, but you get to the point of those battles, that battle picking based on discernment and just experience and prep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to what Ashley is saying, and I think for me, with the experience that I have, I've done 2 features, and both have been with directors that I knew from before. We didn't work together, but we knew each other from film school, socially, and it also came down to our relationship and how honest we were with each other. And, you know, like Ness is saying, you have to deliver under a certain schedule with a certain budget, and involving the director in that conversation in some way, and feeling, I don't know, not feeling afraid to open up and talk about this issue. Because if you're in a circumstance where you can't deliver the perfect look, let's say, but you actually do get the scene and you can tell the story, in my eyes, that's a priority. Of course, there's a threshold that you don't go below, but I think that's also not, that shouldn't really just be on the shoulders of the DOP. There should be also like a director responsibility. And I think just being open about it, or at least that's how I approached it, involve the director in some way or another, and also just involve the producer and just tell them how you feel about, you know, like a certain scene or a certain day. And sometimes, you know, just you also you get your crew to support you. And in my experience, my gaffer and my focus puller have been like the first people that I reached out to, and we're trying to plan in advance as much as you can. Sometimes schedules change as well, and that was the case in my situation with my feature. So I knew that based on the prep that I've done with my gaffer, I could just send them and say, like, you guys get ahead and get the lighting sorted. When we arrive, we can do this or that. But yeah, I think just involving everybody in the conversation, try to get that support, and don't feel like it's just your responsibility and you're kind of lonely with it. That's also very scary when you're starting out, and I definitely felt that pressure. But bottom line, I think story is the most important, at least in my eyes.
On one of the films I shot last year, it was a horror film called Choose or Die, and I think what we did ultimately was to just choose the scenes that we knew were going to take longer, because we knew we had a set amount of time. I hadn't done a film with a director before, but we'd done quite a bit of short form stuff together, so we knew each other, and I knew which sections were really important to him. So I think, in answer to that question, it's really just that we chose that there were certain areas where we wanted a lot of lighting changes in the shot, like contra zooms and things like that, where, you know, it was more tricky and it was going to take a lot more work. And so we just made sure that we scheduled, worked with the producer to make sure there was more time scheduled for those particular things. And then there was other stuff where we knew we would have to go bam, bam, like really shoot fast, just use available light. And yeah, so we were just very selective in which areas we spent the time on. Doesn't always work out exactly to plan, because obviously the weather isn't always what you expect. And the other thing is I really trusted the crew I worked with. As Simona was saying, similar thing. Had a good gaffer who I really trusted, so I knew that he could go off ahead and set things up, and that it wasn't going to be all changed when I got there. I knew he was going to do it as planned. That really makes a difference. And the same, the focus puller I've worked with a lot, and yeah, it's just like trusting, the crew that you're working with, and I love that. When you know that you've got this lovely team of people that you can really trust.
Thanks. Anyone? Okay. In that vein, then, I'd like to talk about the grade and and I guess with experience you realise what is worth doing on set and taking the time to bring in that extra light, or what is actually very easily fixable when you're starting out if you don't necessarily have that knowledge. And I struggle sometimes when I know it's going to be very quick in the grade, and I know that's a 30-second in the grade. No, I'm not going to bother. And I might have an exec with me or a lead actress saying, I need you to fix this now, but I'm not happy, and I'm going, oh, it's fine, that's no problem. But how much do you guys lean on knowing what you can do in post, and what happens then if you can't attend the grade? And how much do you trust that you might be able to attend the grade? Because obviously who knows when the grade's going to be and that thing. Have any of you guys had difficult experiences where you've not been able to attend the grade, or the grade is completely different to what you'd planned in prep, which also happens? Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear some bad stories, because it's all very nice to be like, yeah, I trust everyone, everything's perfect, but in reality that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Volunteers, who wants to go first?
All right, I'll go first. Also a good question. Again, it's the hope that you can choose the colorist that you have and someone that you trust, and can incorporate into the conversation very early on. I'm a big proponent of what you just described, where you pick your battles and you know what you can do later. Ultimately, if you've got a good relationship with the director and the producers, you would hope that if you're not there in the room that, that can be translated, or again with the colorist that you can have that conversation. But particularly in TV, and the bigger features as well, you don't have a voice in there as much as you'd like, because you're not. There's a lot of people above your pay grade that make decisions, and I've found that even when I have opinions, I've my lighting sort of being undone in the grade, and there's not much you can do. So again, it's that the thing of, you plan for the best, and you choose your battles, and you choose your crew and your projects based on sort of hoping that it'll work in your favor. But at one point you do have to sort of just realize you're part of a machine and do your best.
Thank you.
I'll go next. That's kind of the context of one of my features. I'm actually in the grade with my second feature. That's going really well, and that's a positive example of how things can go in a positive way when you do have the right colorist on set, and you do have that prep with them, and the director is on board, then you have a common vision, and that kind of works out perfectly, or at least so far it has been really good. Mm-hmm. But my other feature, which is also in post-production, I'm not sure will I even be able to attend, and I have to rely on somebody that actually I don't know that well, and that's that's terrifying. And you're trying your best on set, and you're sometimes actually giving those extra minutes to bring in a flag or put in the eye light, and you're like, oh, and the grade that has been actually destroyed, and that's heartbreaking. I feel like from an emotional point of view, you have to learn to deal with that, and yes. Ashley was saying, kind of let go. And also, I guess the important part is to really try your best to fight your battles, and if you feel like it's not in your hands anymore, kind of let go of it and accept it, and you can only do your best, really. And yeah, I understand that Ashley says you're part of a bigger machine, or a team that you might not have, I don't know, much control of, and I guess it's part of a DP's career to also learn to deal with that. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents about it.
Catherine?
I don't know if it's not really a bad story, but the experience I've had on being able to communicate with the colorist before the film and get some LUTs makes such a big difference. So I had quite contrasting films. So one of them was a romantic comedy I did last year. So I had LUTs for sort of day and night, and then an interior one, and it did work out. But just sometimes I'd put the LUT on in a certain space, and I'd just think I'll try all of them, and then just think, oh my god, that just looks really bad. So I just chose not to use them. But at least I'd connected with Duncan Russell, who was the colorist on that, and we'd worked out some LUTs before, and so it did save a lot of time, and mostly it worked really well. But then on the horror film, which Jodie Davidson was the colorist, it was made such a big difference, because we'd really brought down the levels, because I knew that as soon as we were on set shooting it, the director would be saying it's not dark enough, it's a horror film. But I knew I also wanted the information there. So just so that the monitors on set looked, more like how it was going to look, was just really important. Whereas, if it had just been Rec 709, it would have been a constant worry of everyone around going, oh, it doesn't look right. So especially on that film, it really made a massive difference. That Jodie, we didn't actually see each other in person, because it was sort of pandemic time, but we had communications with Technicolor, and it really made a big difference. But then in terms of a grade, I have had a sort of negative experience. I won't mention which film it was, but where the director chose to put on a lot of, I get on really well with the director, but they chose to put on loads of flares in post in the grade, and I love flares like a lot of DOPs, but all the flares that got added in post, I just found it really upsetting. And when I spoke to my daughter every evening in the grade, she was just like, oh, I don't know about this collaboration thing. It just seems really hard, like not getting your way. And I was like, that's how it is. You have to collaborate and come to a sort of meeting point. But it doesn't always end up really working out how you plan something to look.
Yeah. Yana?
My ultimate decision based on experience is to actually do as much as I can on set, because I don't know, unfortunately or fortunately, the color grader is a person who can either improve your work massively or completely ruin it. And as all the ladies mentioned here, we unfortunately don't have possibility to always be there at the color grading room and influence the film. It's a bit better in film, but it's totally different in commercial world, where you don't have absolutely any control. You don't even get asked in most cases. At least this is my experience. The biggest brands, they have their own marketing agencies, and that's who make the decisions. And you only see the final result. So that's why I prefer to do as much as I can where possible on set.
Thank you. I'd just add, in commercials, I often try and go to the grade if I can, even though I'm not being paid. Yeah. Because usually the agency are looking at the colour of the product, and they're looking at something completely different than what you're looking at, and they'll totally forget the skin tones of the actors. And if they let me in, I usually get my way in terms of like my fiddly business, as long as they get their way about products, which I don't really care about. So that for me, I always try and go, even if it's not paid, and I always say on set, like,
I do the
let
same.
me know, and I'm always checking in, hey, how you doing? Is it happening? And now that we're better set up with remote working and stuff, even if you can't go, they can send you a quick time, and you can just give a few notes, because the colorists care about skin tone, and the colorists care about that. So as long as you've been like, hey, listen, can you just take 5 minutes to lift the eyes here or do this, and I was a bit worried about the skin tone here, then that is quite a nice way of working sometimes.
Can I just quickly add also that if you have a DIT, even if it's just very, sort of just primaries, I spend my lunches in the DIT van, just sort of, so that at least something goes to them, that they see what your intention was. So you may not be able to do, vignettes or any of that, but at least contrast, color, that kind of thing can at least, or the brightness level, which is always a conversation. But that's a way to bring your vision across, at least to begin with.
Yeah, 100%. I try and let my DITs have their lunch, but sure.
You want to say?
I try and let my DITs have their lunch break.
No, they have a lunch break while I'm working. I can eat all day.
And also with with iPads and stuff, it's amazing that they can come to you on set.
Yes, that's right.
And you go a little bit less green, and that's amazing, and that is so different.
Agreed.
I mean, when I started out, I was on film, so
yeah.
just the way it's changed is amazing. And new people starting out probably like really au fait with all these fancy apps and stuff that we're all like, ooh, what's happening? Okay, we've got 6.5 minutes left. I have a question. Microphone coming to you, I think. You can't see anything.
Such a huge contour.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
We are all shooting and artists and making pictures, that's great, but we don't talk much about management. of people and difficult personalities?
Good question.
Have you got any tips for that? Because I found as we grow as DPs, we get into bigger shoots and it becomes harder and harder. You get bigger teams.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're under more pressure, more politics. How do you manage your morale of your team, keep them up, and how do you manage the difficult people as well?
Beer.
Always.
I'm going to start because I had
Yeah.
a bad experience last year where I was the person they had a problem with, and being on the receiving end of knowing the execs weren't happy. What I've learned from being in that position is I was open to criticism. You know what I mean? I was like, I really want to know what you need and what you want, because I'm not happy that you're not happy. Let me know. And I was frustrated that wasn't opening, like an open conversation. You know, as a DP, I've had fair share of difficult people, and I try really hard to have face-to-face conversations, which is not like, you're terrible and I hate you, but like, this isn't working, what can we do? Let me know what I can do to help you, help me, you know, let's be a team and not be in conflict, because it's really not helpful when we're on set with conflict within our department, because directors don't have time for any of that, and nor does the schedule. So having been on the receiving end and knowing like how frustrating it was, that I was sort of ready, now I try to do that. And obviously sometimes you can overdo that as well, because people don't want to have it all day, like, this isn't right. So it's a hard balance. But I think open communication is probably the thing, and being really specific about what the problem is. But also I would say you kind of have to pick your battles, because you have to work out, how long am I going to work with this person, and are they going to change? Like, if I'm only working with them 2 weeks, I can put up with this because I don't have the energy to like sit them down and do this whole thing, because you've got so much going on, and like the energy it takes to like do that work is quite big. So it's like, are we building a long-term relationship? Can we find a way to do this? Or am I just going to put up with this because it's only 2 weeks? So I think that for me, that decision, because and it happens with directors as well. Like, you have a director that's just totally off your wavelength, and if you're on a long job, it's really important to work that out. But if they're flying in for 10 days, then I'll just take it, do my work, focus on what I need to do, and say, and keep. And also, it's actually quite good sometimes just to leave that relationship built, because often people forget how hard the shoot was when the project, or whatever it is good at the end. Suddenly it's like, hey, that was so great, well done, and you're like, yeah. But you know what I mean? The bridge is open, and you've left that in a good place.
Yeah. I think one of the most important things is not to take things personally, and I think that's it's really key. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean the crew don't take things personally. So even if you don't do that yourself, or you try and practice that, it doesn't necessarily trickle down. I mean, what I tend to do on the first day, I haven't always done this, but I've sort of learnt to do this, is I go around every single member of the crew, if in my department's in camera and lighting, and I say to them, do let me know if you have, if you're upset about anything during the shoot, or if you have any issues, please talk. Like Ness says, keep an open conversation, so they know that even if they're the camera trainee, if they've got a problem with the focus puller, they can come and talk to me, and I've sort of opened that door for them. But it's really hard, because a lot of us, are photographers and artists to start with, and we've just got no people management skills at all. So it's like a learning process, and you have to not give yourself too much of a hard time. But it is just really good to sort of let people know that that's open, and the more they talk to you, the better. It doesn't always mean it's perfect. I mean, last year on one of the films, the line producer wanted to sack my gaffer, and I had to spend the whole evening talking to the producers, saying why they shouldn't sack the gaffer. It was very busy, it was going to really be bad for the film, and then I had to spend the rest of the evening talking to the gaffer and persuading him to write an email of apology. And he said, I'm not going to do that because the line producer is a misogynist, and I can't apologise for what his behaviour is. But we managed to come to a compromise, so that he stayed on the film, and they didn't talk to each other anymore, but at least they all carried working together. So it's communication all round, I think.
Yeah, if I can add, I mean, yes, everything that everyone said is very valid, like just understanding where they're coming from. HODs are dealing with stuff with line producers that we're obviously not hearing, that kind of thing, and finding a common ground with people, buying some beers at the end of a long week, introducing yourself when you get there. But I do think that there is a point. I've worked with European crews who are fantastic, but they can be very vocal about how tired or annoyed they are about something, and after a certain point, you do have to just go, I can't bend for you anymore. We've all been kind. The director's been great. We've even finished on time or early sometimes. I think at one point you do just have to go, do you want to go tell the director we can't do this because you don't, there is a point where you just have to go, everyone just needs to get on with the job. If you've already set all what we just said after that, it's just, as you say, as Ness said, just deal with them and then move on. But yeah, I think as long as you're kind and fair, after that, it's like, well, we should all just get on with it, shouldn't we?
We are almost out of time. You want to add or not?
Just a very quick note. I agree absolutely with everything Lady said. I'd always first try a nice, comfortable approach and talk to a person, but I won't spend much time. Life's too short to spend it on people who are disrespectful or unprofessional on set. It's a very competitive industry, and if it's in your power, don't surround yourself with distractive people who are in your way to get what you want to get, and to make the project happen. Just swap for another person if you have this power. If don't, then obviously it's probably a long story of trying to sort out the problem. But if you have possibility, don't waste time. It's quite radical.
Don't waste time is quite a good one note to end on.
My last comment is to, think compassion, because you don't know what people are going through, and you might be that person, you might be in their shoes at some point, and give people time, but at the same time, do confront them. Don't let them be a bully, or don't let them take advantage of the situation. And obviously everybody has their own limits, and a lot has been said, but yeah, do approach people in a kind way at the beginning, and they might not even realize they're doing it. But yeah, I feel like if you do give them that compassion, they have to give it back to you and the rest of the team, and they have to be part of that community. But yeah, it might be just so hard on people, and they might not realize that they're not behaving in the right way or in the way that you expect them to, and it's not that professional the way they're approaching things. But yeah, I feel like also from my own experience, do confront people. Just don't let them kind of have that behavior around you and your team. It's not fair on anybody, and just, it just brings down everybody's mood and the quality of your own work. And it's just not, we should be there also enjoying ourselves if we're away from our families and friends. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, everyone, so early in the morning. We are finished.